A little while ago, I released an episode called Why Leaders Are Lonely. Afterwards, I received messages from listeners who told me how much that episode had stayed with them. It made me realize that perhaps we had only touched the surface of a much bigger conversation. In fact, former PepsiCo CEO Indra Nooyi once spoke about this candidly. She said that the higher she rose in the leadership, the more she realized that success changed relationships. People no longer always responded to her as Indra, but as the CEO. That struck me because it highlights something that many people quietly experience. The higher we climb in any area of our life, the easier it becomes for others to relate to the roles we play rather than the person we actually are. That is not a leadership issue, it's a human one. Welcome to Unbox the podcast. I'm your host, Sahar Huneidi Palmer. When we hear the phrase lonely at the top, we usually assume it is because leaders carry a lot of responsibility, and they make difficult decisions and they have fewer people around them who truly understand the pressures they face. This is certainly has some truth in it. But the more I reflected on it, the more I realized that loneliness may not be the real issue here at all. I think loneliness is often a symptom. The real issue is disconnection. Interestingly, recent research is beginning to support what many leaders have felt and experienced for years. It suggests that loneliness is associated with leadership is not simply about being alone. Many successful people spend their day surrounded by others. The difference is, as responsibility grows, relationships often become more transactional. People become more careful about what they say around you. They are less likely to disagree, honestly, and more likely to respond to the role rather than the person. At some point, it becomes difficult to know whether people are connecting with you or with the position you hold. The more I thought about this, the more I realized that this is not only about leadership. Leadership simply makes it easier to recognize. The same thing is happening to many of us. We become so identified with the role that we play that it slowly begins to define who we are. We become the CEO, the business owner, the parent, the caregiver, the influencer, or simply the person everyone depends on. Without even noticing it, if one identity grows stronger while the rest of who we are quietly slips into the background. Success is not the problem. Ambition is not the problem. Wanting to build something meaningful is also not the problem. The problem begins when one area of our life quietly starts consuming all the others. It rarely happens overnight. We tell ourselves it is only temporary, only until this project is finished, or only until this business is secure, or only until the children grow older, or only until life becomes less busy. But life never does, and life doesn't pause. Months become years, and one day we realize that we have achieved many of the things that we set out to do to achieve, but we no longer feel connected in the same way to our life, to people around us, or even to ourselves. This is exactly why I have developed the BEMA methodology tool. It's called Designing the Web of Your Life. I have always believed that we cannot understand our lives by looking at one area in isolation. We're constantly influenced by our body, our mind, emotions, and belief system, and of course, accountability to our actions. These dimensions are always interacting with one another, they don't pose. When one dimension dominates for too long, the others disappear into the background. and we experience lack of alignment or friction. They simply wait for us until we notice them. This is why I think when we ask the wrong question, we get a useless answer. Instead of asking, why do I feel lonely? Perhaps we should ask, what have I become disconnected from? Have I become disconnected from my health, my relationships, my creativity, my values, or even my sense of purpose? Or perhaps more importantly, have I become disconnected with myself? I think this is why two people can experience being alone very differently. One person can spend the weekend by themselves and they feel great, they feel content, while another can spend a day surrounded by people and still feel lonely. Loneliness is not simply the absence of people. More often than that, it is the absence of genuine connection. And that connection begins with ourselves. One of the excuses I hear most often from clients is that I don't have time. I understand that because it can become incredibly demanding. But I don't think time is usually the real issue either. I think awareness is. We naturally invest our time where our attention is. If all our attention is on work, then work will expand into dominating our lives. If all our attention is on caring to everyone else, then that becomes our identity. The difficulty is that we stop seeing the rest of the picture. We do not notice that friendships have moved into the background. We notice that we are neglecting our health or physical body or even our creativity. We have put aside. Do you have a creative hobby? When is the last time that you actually did something? For me, awareness has never been about finding what is wrong. It is about seeing the whole picture, 360 degrees. Once we see our life as a whole, instead of focusing on one problem, something really shifts. We begin to see where our energy is being spent, and we notice what we neglected or what really needs our attention. We cannot reconnect with what we don't realize. We cannot reconnect if we don't know what we have disconnected from. That is why awareness comes before change. This is also why I believe success should never come at the expense of the rest of our lives. It shouldn't cost us our health, our relationships, our peace of mind, or even our sense of identity. Success should expand our lives, not shrink it. It should deepen our relationships, not replace them. It should help us become more of ourselves, not less. This is exactly why I've designed the web of your life, because it is really like a web. It was designed to make the intangible tangible. When you do the exercise, it helps you recognize the different aspects of your life and how they are connected, so that you can honestly assess what's working well and what needs your attention. Once you can see the whole picture, the next step becomes naturally easier. You're no longer reacting to life, you're consciously designing it, you're taking the reins back. If this has resonated with you, I encourage you to set aside a little bit of time this week where you can work on your life. You may discover what you thought was loneliness is actually life inviting you to bring it back into balance, to reconnect with the part of yourself that has been patiently waiting for you. You will find the link in the episode description below. Until next Tuesday, remember that awareness is always the beginning of change.